Let's just go ahead and get started with your background. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself.
I've been in the AI space for the last 10 years and was previously doing a PhD at Stanford on AI and reinforcement learning. So I invented a lot of like state-of-art algorithms on imitation learning, reinforcement learning. How can you have agents that can play video games like Minecraft and controlling robotic arms? And previously worked at Google, Nvidia, Apple, on a lot of like different projects across like self-driving cars, robotics. So I've been involved in like building intelligent systems for a while, and it's just been fascinating to see like how fast the field has progressed. Previously, I started like one of the first AI agent companies, Multion, which worked on building like agentic browser automations, and we have been very successful. We raised a Series A with $30 million with top VCs in the Bay Area last year, and um, recently I started like a research lab called AGI Inc, where we are like doing a lot of state of art things around building agents that are universal, can control any interface on any device, and our goal is to build something that's is an AI OS that can do things for you.
Awesome. All right, so let's just go ahead and get started with your early background. So, you went to Cornell for undergrad. Maybe tell us a little bit about kind of your experience, studying computer science there. I think you created like the first working camera-based self-driving car system. You published a bunch of sort of conference papers in 3D vision and things like that. Tell us a little bit about kind of that experience and kind of what motivated you to get your PhD.
Sure. Yeah, so that was really fun. So my first research work was in my sophomore year at Cornell,
Mm-hmm.
and I was working in Uber's self-driving car division
Mm-hmm.
as a summer internship, and so I had
Mm-hmm.
a lot of experience on like what are the problems in the industry at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing at the time was like everyone was using a lidar-based system,
Mm-hmm.
where you have a point cloud, and then you have to use that to like detect other objects in the surroundings of a like an autonomous vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And the lidar systems used to be very expensive, costing above $60,000 per unit.
Mm-hmm.
And my research at Cornell was like, how can you have like a binocular vision system that's inspired by humans that can like do the same thing? And it was a very novel approach. I think no one was actually doing that at the time, so we actually were just trying. Okay, like let's see if it can work. And this was my very first research project, and I was working with some like PhDs in the vision lab at Cornell, and we decided let's see what happens if we just can take two cameras, create a like a depth map of the things in the surroundings, convert the depth map into like a more of a 3D point cloud, and like use that for like detecting like things in the surroundings of the vehicle. And it was kind of surprising. We were able to get an accuracy of 80%, which was the state of art. And before that, for vision-based systems, the previous state of art was like 20%. And it was kind of like we didn't realize like it's like okay, this is a crazy thing, and we were like okay, like how did we go from like 20% to 80%? And that was kind of like really fun, and we actually spent like a couple of weeks just thinking about like, is there any data contamination? Are we doing something wrong? Is this like finding actually correct? And it turned out everything was valid. So that was like kind of like really fun experience. We got covered in like Forbes and a bunch of other like magazines. People really like what we were doing, and I think now the technology is being adopted by Waymo and Tesla and so on. So that was like a way and a paper that was kind of like pretty ahead in terms of like when we published it, and and that got me really excited about pursuing more research and like how can you keep building this kind of like more smarter systems, how can you create more utility where like these things can unlock value and have an impact in the real world.
Awesome. So, sort of moving forward, you went to Stanford for your PhD. At Stanford, you were involved with a lot of different things. Maybe just tell us a bit about some of the research you're really proud of that you worked on at Stanford, and then kind of how that ended up leading you into your first company.
Sure. So at Stanford, I was involved in a lot of like reinforcement learning. So this was way back in 2022, where like no one was doing reinforcement learning. It was kind of like the untouched subject People actually thought you were crazy if you were trying to publish something in reinforcement learning because it was not a hot area. So it was very hard to get citations. So the conventional like wisdom at the time was like do not touch RL. And but I think I've found it fascinating. I have a physics background, and I really like the it's like more mathematically principled, and it's just like fascinating on like how like all these things combine together to build more intelligent systems. And I pioneered some of the state of art methods and like offline reinforcement learning. One of them is called inverse Q learning, which was a big theoretical advance on understanding frameworks around like how can you decode reward functions from experts and use that to train like models. And this is similar to like what people are trying to do with like verifiers for like RL environments nowadays. And so that was like a really fun work to work on. And I also published papers on like how can you do reinforcement learning in with offline data, where you have a bunch of samples where some of them might be from experts, but some of them might be suboptimal. And can you learn from this mixture of experience to like create a algorithm that allows you to like improve over time and get you to the optimal policy. And then that was like again like a really fun work to like publish, and we were like state of art.
Awesome. And sort of moving forward, maybe tell us a little bit about kind of Multion, like your first company, and tell us a little bit about kind of AGI.
Sure. So Multion initially started as a side project during my PhD. Then this was way back in 2023, just after ChatGPT came out. So yeah, so ChatGPT came out in November 2022. And after that, I was very excited about how can you apply a lot of like actions and agentic abilities with large language models. And this was like winter break at Stanford. I didn't have any plans. I was just hacking around. And my goal was to see if we can go and build like a digital assistant that can go and take actions for you. And I was just thinking over like evenings and the weekends, and I figured out a way to use the ChatGPT backend as an API. And this was way before like OpenAI launched an API. So this was before GPT-4, before there was an actual OpenAI API, and there was only ChatGPT. So I was literally like hacking into their backend and like using their backend as an API. And then we were trying to see like, okay, like, can you use this to take actions in a browser? And we came with like a very interesting method where we were able to parse and compress the HTML on the screen of for any website, pass that into like a LLM, and ask it to output actions. And it actually worked, and like no one expected it to work, so that was really fun. And then we did this thing where we had our AI go and order a burger on DoorDash, and that went super viral. We got over 1 million views, 1,000+ likes over Twitter, and then all the VCs in the Bay Area were reaching out. Okay, like, oh wow, like this is really cool. And then eventually I decided to like, okay, like this is, and we got a lot of traction. We got 100,000 people to sign up on a wait list, and I was like, wow, like this seems to be something that people really want. And I decided to put my PhD on a pause and like actually do this as a full-time thing. And it was has been a really fun journey building like Multion as one of the first Asian companies, and then recently like transitioning into like AGI.
Awesome. And tell us a little bit about kind of AGI and kind of how it's different from Multion.
Sure. So we started AGI as a research lab, taking a lot of learnings from building Multion, and our goal was like when we were like starting with Multion, like a lot of the technology was very early. Like this was like people hadn't figured out reasoning. There was no reinforcement learning. It was hard to make agents be reliable and make sure like they're actually doing the things that you really care about. And we decided like it makes sense to go and spend a lot of time on like training models and doing a lot of advanced research, especially with how do you make these agents more reliable, and like can we like ensure that they always do the task they care about. So how do you make this agents steerable. And that's one thing that we've been like really focused on. So right now, AGI is like also like we are a 15% research lab, and we have hired some of the best researchers um, in the field right now who have well experience with agents and reinforcement learning. And we figured out like how to make like very very small models that can take actions, whether that's on your Android phone or like a Windows machine, Linux, Mac OS, and uh, and our agents can actually run on device. So that's one like thing that we're pioneering. Like, how can you have this on device agents where you don't have to send screenshots to a remote server?
Awesome. So I guess like maybe tell us a little bit about kind of the difference between these larger research labs and kind of a smaller research lab. Where do you kind of see your competitive advantage there?
Sure. So it's like the one of the biggest things we're doing is we are pioneering like I would say local agents. So can you have agents that are fully on device and can take actions for you without sending any data to a third party server? And we think this is going to be the next revolution, where like if you want to go build an AI phone or an AI PC, you don't want that device to be sending all your private data from a user to a third party server. And if everything can happen locally, I think that is the future. And we think this is the right time to go and enable that as like hardware is getting better and better, and models getting smaller and smaller. So for example, GPT-5 is smaller than GPT-4, and we see the natural convergence over here is at some point every model should be running locally, and it should be able to like do things for you. And we think this is very very important, especially when it comes to like taking actions, because there's a big risk around like user privacy if this agent has action, like access to all your screen, like it can like it's like kind of knows everything about you. And we want to make sure like if we're building something which is agentic, it's um, like uh, like like acting across your whole device, everything is secure and private. And we really want to make sure that we can build this trust with users. And we don't think like the big frontier labs will go and build this right now, because it's counter to their focus in terms of building like better and larger models. So we think there is going to be this new wave of embedded intelligence, where like this intelligence is embedded in your device, and we really want to go figure that and pioneer it.
Awesome. So I guess like tell us a little bit more about embedded intelligence. Like, what are some of the use cases you're seeing in industry? Kind of like why haven't other companies gone after this? What do you think about kind of AGI Inc. specifically will help enable some of this?
Sure. Like I would just say it's like a hard problem. There's a like obviously there's like people who are building like local LLMs that can run like on device. So Olama is a great example. And what we've seen like normally like most people are invariant of whether the model runs locally or on the cloud, especially if it's just like a language model, because there's not many like security or like issues, and so we've not seen like that much of a demand change between just like like just language models themselves. But when it comes to like taking agentic actions, there's just a much bigger security risk, and that's where we've seen like people really care about like having these things um, being embedded. And like I would say, we've been chatting with a lot of OEMs, like device manufacturers. Everyone is looking for something which they can ship out, like maybe this year or in the coming year. And everyone wants something that says customizable, maybe that can be deployed locally, and it doesn't create like a user privacy risk. And I think I would just say it's just a new wave that is starting to happen, and it requires a lot of innovation, like a lot of like stuff on post training. You can't do this as just a GPT wrapper. You need to own the innovation and make sure like these things are working, and the models have to be small enough so they can like fit on the device, and they have to be very intelligent. And that's something that our team is like currently like best at in the world and making.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Okay, cool. So just kind of thinking more broadly about kind of the industry. Um, like you kind of have taken this bet on kind of on-device AI. There are other companies that are working on things like, for instance, RL for enterprises, and I think a lot of research is being done both by companies like Prime Intellect, but also companies like Mechanize. Your companies that are working on RL for enterprises. Generally, within the enterprise AI space, which is pretty expansive, we've seen a
Yep.
lot of different verticals. One is this RL for enterprise vertical. One is kind of like browser agents, which obviously you've spent a lot of time working on, but specifically things for RPA, so like robotic process automation and sort of agentic RPA. One is kind of using agents for call centers and for customer support. This is where things like Decagon, Sierra come in. One is like legal, so this is where you see things like Harvey, so on and so forth. So, kind of within all of these trends that you're seeing for enterprises, you could have picked any trend to focus on, for this company, but it seems like you kind of took a bet on device specifically, and you also named your company AGI Inc. So maybe just tell us a little bit about kind of like what motivated that decision, especially because there's so many different avenues you could have picked.
Sure. So, hmm, I'll say that when we were starting this company, we were thinking about like what will personal superintelligence look like. It's very possible we'll have superintelligence in the next 3 years, and we really want to have a world where it's democratized. So if you look at it right now, it's maybe like 4 or 5 frontier labs who are basically serving the whole ecosystem. And and I think there's a risk that we're just so reliant on these frontier models that all of our data, everything is just something that is fully exposed. And like it's like we start living in this world where like all the recommendations, everything we see in the digital world is like customized by one of the labs. And I think for us, our big goal has been like how can we preserve user privacy? So how can intelligence be democratized? That you are in control of your own data and like how you do things. And we think that future can be enabled with on device. Like if a lot of the capabilities we see right now in terms of what say GPT-5 can do, but that could be bought on device. I think that will be a very positive, like I would say, like that will be a very utopian world to live in because as these models become smarter and smarter, they have memory, they know a lot of things about you. You might want to customize them, like learn a lot about your workflows. Maybe they're recording your screen, doing a lot of things for you. Then I think it's just very important. Like this kind of personal super intelligence lives on your device, and it's not like somewhere in a cloud, where like maybe like a third party can go and like use it for like maybe some like selling ads, for example, or like someone can go and hack it. So we think that the right feature for personal superintelligence is for that to be on device.
Right, totally makes sense. Okay, cool. So kind of like moving forward, you've spent a lot of time kind of throughout, industry, through research, through academia, and now, in companies. I think broadly, probably a lot of the people in the audience are researchers or academics that are either considering building a company or considering maybe joining one of these startups. Maybe tell us a little bit about kind of that experience of, being somebody that was in a PhD program that could have certainly driven it to completion if you wanted to become a professor or become a researcher in industry, as opposed to going off on your own and building a startup. Like, what are some of the things that you feel like you've learned, particularly with that background?
Hmm. That's a good question. Like I would say, there are definitely common threads, and there's like a lot of like differences. So I'll start with the common threads. So one great thing about a PhD is you just learn how to think outside the box. So like, how can we innovate? How can you come up with something new? And there's not many places in your life where you get to do that. And I think a PhD is a very unique place where you can unlock your creativity, really like follow your passions. And I think that can be a great benefit when you're like running a company and like doing a startup, because like a lot of startup is about like how can you innovate and like build something that's a 10x compared to competition. And then I think my PhD career helped a lot in just thinking outside the box and coming with like new solutions like that are like first principles and like thinking from scratch. And I would say a lot of famous entrepreneurs have had like successful careers like out of a PhD, like Larry Page, for example, or Elon Musk as a famous example, who dropped out of Stanford PhD too. So I feel like that's one great thing about a PhD. And but when it comes to doing a startup, I think it's just like a multifaceted problem. It's just like much more complex, and then you just have to like learn a lot of like different nuances of how to really build like a growth engine. How do you like keep compounding over time by time? How do you grow resources? How do you fundraise? How do you hire? And I think those are things that you just have to learn. And there are a lot of like soft skills and like a lot of business skills. I think you just have to acquire. So I will say there's definitely a lot of nuances, but I think that the just having that kind of like a mindset of thinking outside the box has is very helpful for a startup.
Hmm. And I guess like, concretely, there's a lot of different kind of things you worked on at AGI Inc. Like there's, for instance, like an AGI API, right? There's like kind of benchmarks and scores that you guys have on your website. I think you guys call it AGIO, which is kind of like your personalized proactive coworker. And even beyond that, like you guys have things like, for instance, agentic checkout, so on and so forth. I think one thing that's interesting is your first company, Multion. It's kind of like almost sold as like a consumer product company in some sense. Like you kind of want to give everyone the ability to, have kind of AI in their pocket. It's kind of like this really hot consumer AI agent company. And it feels like AGI Inc. kind of also maybe has an enterprise tilt in addition to maybe this consumer tilt. So maybe tell us a little bit about kind of how you switch your business model, or if you still have this consumer business model, and maybe some of the challenges of consumer versus enterprise.
Sure. Again, great question. I would say like as I mentioned, our goal at AGI Inc. is to build embedded intelligence. And so how we're thinking of what our first product is, it's more of an AI OS. So imagine it's like a AI operating system which has this agents inbuilt, and we can do agentic actions across Android, Linux, Mac, Windows. And like one of the first goals is like how do you commercialize that? So what we are making available right now is we have like VMs which are running our AI OS in the cloud, and we are exposing them as an API. So if anyone wants to have an agent that can take OS level actions in the cloud, we are making that available, and that's is what we are calling as our like the first product is the AGI API, and we're experimenting with like who are the like partners who really want this. Like we have a lot of merchants and like a lot of like enterprise partners who have been like looking to use this for like RPA knowledge work, and so that's like the first product we're releasing. We're also thinking of like launching this as something that's local. So can this be an experience that's actually controlling your local desktop, like your Mac, for example, or it's controlling your local, it's controlling your phone. And those are also possibilities. And we think if we are launching a local experience, that can be a great consumer product where you can use this as a AI coworker that's working alongside you on your desktop and taking actions for you. And it's possible eventually we can give this a more consumer spin. So it's something that's like fun and friendly to use. But like that's how we'll like talk about like what we're building. It's like how can we build the world's first AI OS with agents inbuilt to take actions for you?
Awesome. Um, and maybe our last question here, like, obviously you've had a career that kind of has spanned, a lot of different experiences, right? Like, NVIDIA, like you sort of mentioned, Apple as well, like all of these different experiences in big tech, but then, also your experience, doing PhD. Um, and then you've also kind of experienced, a few different companies, right? Like one in the kind of consumer AI space, and then maybe one in this more like kind of embedded, kind of like on-device AI space as well. If you had to think back to maybe people that don't have a ton of industry experience but are very hungry and interested to learn about AI right now, um, how do you think they should figure out like what specific area to work on? Do you think that they should try out research, try out big tech, try out startups, figure out which one of those they like? Like how should they really figure out what's best for them? Like what would you recommend doing?
Yeah, like right now the whole of the AI industry is moving like super fast.
Yeah.
And my recommendation would be to like find some places which are like high growth, have working, then you get to work on fun problems. Because startups are great for that. Where like that right now, there's like so many like research startups, and everyone is working on like some different things. My PhD advisor at Stanford, Stefan Overmont, he just like he's just like he's doing this company called Inception Labs, where they're building diffusion LLMs, and like there's a lot of like other innovations happening in the industry. And I think it's a lot about like just maybe like getting a lot of different experiences. Where like, I think I would say like right now it's kind of like you can, instead of doing a PhD and spending 5 years in academia, you can literally spend 5 years working in 5 different startups,
Mm-hmm.
and you will just learn a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say like the real innovation right now is happening in like startups,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe the frontier labs, and like that's the best places to be right now.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right. Without further ado, on that note, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks.